Welcome to HaytersTV down here at Arsenal's Emirates Stadium. We're going to take a look back at Arsenal's season so far as we're in this sort of football lockdown period at the moment.
Good evening.
But I think first of all, Si, we just want to take a look back through this season. It seems such a long time ago now that Unai Emery was the manager of this club, and Arsenal went to America pre-season. And if you remember, the big news around that tour was that Laurent Koscielny was still the club captain there, and he announced that he didn't want to go on tour and he didn't want to stay playing for Arsenal. Can you remember covering that story?
Yeah, well, I remember that sort of breaking over the summer, and you and I will know we've been on these tours before. I mean, been to Singapore and places like that. That these are big events. These tours, you know, there's a lot of money made in commercial activities, played in front of huge stadiums, many of the fans there, and for the club captain, I mean, pretty much as they were about to go on the bus, really, Arsenal, they were, you know, ready to go on this tour to America, and Koscielny, you know, pulled rank and said, I'm not going, I want to go back to France. There were reasons that sort of came out in the French press, you know, family reasons, things like that. But I think it took everyone at the club by great surprise, really, didn't it? I mean, you've covered Arsenal for longer than me, and you'll know what a figure Koscielny's been for that club. And for him to do that, I think was the first signs where we thought, hang on a minute, this is a bit odd, and is there, you know, a wider problem here? We'll get on to the captaincy issue later in the season, but that was really the first marker to see Koscielny pull rank like that, and Arsenal be strong, to be fair, and, you know, briefed hard against, you know, the issues that it caused, and they basically flew off the tour without a captain.
Yeah. If you remember, they were going into that sort of summer post-season and pre-season on the back of what was a pretty disastrous end to the season, losing to Chelsea in Baku in the Europa League final. I mean, absolutely humiliated in that final. I think it took the club a long time to recover.
Matches competition also can be different. And tomorrow is one very good opportunity for us to play that match.
I mean, there was some, you know, it was said there was only 40 million in the transfer market, but then in came Martinelli, Pepe, Tierney, David Luiz. There was quite a big turnover of players coming to the start of the season, wasn't there? Yeah,
I mean, you could argue with that Baku Europa League final, did Arsenal ever really recover from that? I mean, it really was, you know, a painful night. I mean, I think anyone remembers watching that game, the image of Mesut Ozil being hauled off for Joe Willock was an indication of how much, you know, Emery was scrambling for answers and how badly he'd been let down by some of his senior players. And that summer, I think everyone thought that Arsenal need to spend some money here. They need to, you know, invest in that squad. We obviously saw Nicola Pepe come in, a loss of money, £72 million.
Club record signing.
Yeah, club record signing. The fact that it was staggered over those, you know, 5 years, 16 million a year, obviously meant it could get over the line. Wilfried Zaha was a name we saw linked. It was obviously Arsenal wanted that, you know, dynamic, pacing winger to add to the front line. And then, of course, towards the end of the window, we saw Kieran Tierney come in and David Luiz. And you looked at the window and you thought, you know, this is really good business. You've got one of the best attackers in France, player that David Luiz. Okay, I know some people will point to his, you know, his faults. I mean, there's always that famous Gary Neville comment of, you know, plays like a kid with a PlayStation controller. But let's bear in mind, this is a guy who's won the Premier League. He's won Liga. He's vastly experienced. And he thought for £8 million, it's a pretty good replacement for Koscielny. And then Kieran Tierney, everyone knows about how good a fullback he's been in Scotland. So at the end of the window, I don't know about you, but I looked at it and I thought Arsenal had one of their best windows for many seasons, especially when we heard about the financial troubles.
Yeah, I mean, there were people tweeting, if I remember, Arsenal have won the transfer window. And of course, people were coming back at Arsenal fans saying you don't actually get any points for having a good transfer window, and let's actually see how it gets on the pitch. And if you remember, Arsenal kicked off the season with and I think it was an away win at Newcastle, wasn't it? And then Burnley at home here. Dani Ceballos, on loan from Real Madrid, was outstanding in that match against Burnley. And after the first few games, after that first month, August, well, hang on a minute, Unai Emery maybe knows what he's doing. Is this going to be Arsenal back in the top four, challenging for trophies? Did you have that sense of hope and expectation?
I remember doing that opening game at Newcastle, which was one of the bleakest days in August. It was so wet, you sat in the press box, you know, you literally couldn't write, you're getting absolutely drenched. But Arsenal went there, you know, they dug in, it wasn't pretty, they won 1-0, a brilliant Aubameyang goal, which is the story of the season really, you know, Aubameyang coming to the rescue. But it was very un-Arsenal-like in that they dug in, they really fought at the back, and they got a result. You thought, oh, this is a new sort of resilience, we haven't really seen this from Arsenal. And then we didn't see an away clean sheet for months, you know, and But there was that optimism then that this was something special, and it was the young players as well. I think it's important to highlight that really at the start of that season, you know, the likes of Joe Willock suddenly looked like the young player we hadn't really seen before. Reece Nelson was showing flash of brilliance. Martinelli, particularly in the Europa League, looked exciting. Bukayo Saka, obviously, we know has gone on to great things, but they gave a lot of optimism to fans, and as it always does with, you know, when it's a homegrown player. We obviously know about Tottenham up the road and Harry Kane and that, but it really does make a difference to fans. And I think at the start of the season, there was this sort of belief, like, oh, we've got quite a young, exciting group here. We've got the players from the summer who aren't fully in there. Once they're all together, you know, this can go somewhere. And people rightly pointed out that Emery went over 20 games unbeaten in his first season. Yeah. So there was reasons to be optimistic.
There were, although I have to remember matches like, I think it was September, but, you know, early in the season, Watford away. Was it 2-0 up and drew 2-2?
Yeah, that was arguably the moment where it...
Sorry to interrupt, but the point I wanted to make then was Arsenal were conceding something like, or allowing 30 plus chances on goal a game.
Yeah.
I mean, there was that midfielders all over the place. There was no shape to the team. Aaron Ramsey, of course, is now away in Juventus. Petr Cech has gone. Whether he should have gone before, I don't know. That's another debate. But it seemed like the team had no shape. Torreira was playing out of position, and it was just a question of when or by how many goals Arsenal would let in.
Yeah, I mean, let's be key. The optimism period was that sort of August month. But I think you're right. That Watford game really was a big moment, wasn't it? I think that was the first sort of time where, you know, Arsenal were quite comfortable in that game, quite cruising. I mean, everyone, you probably Google it now, you'll find the clip of Guendouzi giving it to the Watford fans who'd been 2-1 up, and famously it came back to bite him. But that was against a very poor Watford team, let's be honest, who have improved, of course. But those were the signs, and then we saw, I think October and November, the final months of Emery, is where we saw, like you say, they were basically basketball matches. They were essentially end to end. It was, you know, complete chaos. I remember the Wolves game here was exactly like that, where there were so many shots on goal. Southampton came here, and again, over 20 shots on goal. And as much as they were, for the start of September, October, they were getting through it, you knew it wasn't really sustainable. And then, of course, we had everything that happened in October and November with Emery.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the end of sort of Unai Emery's reign. It was, in a way, it was the Europa League. He was sort of clinging on to that, wasn't it? And was it the Frankfurt game here? Where I mean, I covered that game away in Frankfurt, and they won 3-0, if I remember rightly. But Frankfurt could have scored 4 or 5 before. And well, just to talk about Arsenal in the Europa League and how that all.
Yeah, well, again, it was a microcosm of the season, because that game in Frankfurt, the Iraq, was when Bukayo Saka burst onto the scene, and everyone was talking about him at the end of the game. You know, brilliant away result, and then like the league form, it slowly went downhill. I think everyone will remember, obviously, the final game, the Frankfurt game, but I think the match before that in Guimarães, I went to cover that in Portugal, and that was one of the bleakest games and one of the darkest games of the Emery era. I mean, it was on a Wednesday afternoon at sort of 4 o'clock, given to sort of police authorities, things like that, which felt very strange. Very few home fans there because of that, because it was sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Very few Arsenal fans travelled because of that again. Eerily quiet stadium, pouring down with rain. I mean, Emery was stood on the sideline, you know, his hood over himself, looking a pretty broken man. And 89 minutes Arsenal played before they had a shot on target. And then eventually Mustafi scored a header, and you thought, oh, here you go. On the unlikeliest of heroes, has bailed Emery out. Guimarães then equalised, and then probably should have won the game. And all of a sudden, you know, you're thinking, I mean, how? And it's not a very good Guimarães team, who they just beat here, bear in mind. Nicola Pepe turned up and scored 2 late goals. And that's when you really thought, right, this is getting to the point where, you know, this is becoming untenable. And then the Frankfurt game was the final real nail in the coffin, wasn't it? I mean, we saw season ticket holders didn't turn up. You know, it was probably one of the lowest crowds in Arsenal's history at the Emirates. We'll never really know that because of the way they always say tickets sold, and that's the way it's done, so you never know. But you looked around the stadium, and I thought 40,000, maybe less than that, turned up. And when fans stop coming, you know, it's fair enough if they boo, if they protest, but when they literally don't bother and the apathy is there, that's when the concern is.
I think apathy is the key word there, because unlike, you know, those last days of Arsene Wenger, there were times when the fan base was quite divided. There was a Wenger in and Wenger out, and people were letting their voices be heard outside the stadium rather, and inside. But you could see the writing. It was just apathy with Unai Emery. People just stopped bothering coming, stopped bothering, sort of almost full stop, didn't they? And I just remember talking about that Frankfurt game with Bukayo Saka. I covered that match in Frankfurt, and afterwards we spoke to Saka in the mix zone, because he had a fantastic match. and he was talking a lot about the influence of not Unai Emery but Freddie Ljungberg. He said it was Freddie who had obviously been promoted to Unai's first team coaching staff, having been with the younger players, who was the one who was giving all players like him the advice. He said, when we don't understand what Unai says, Freddie explains it to us, and it was quite clear to me then that Emery's message was not getting through to the players. Remember, while you're watching this video here on HaytersTV, remember to like, share and subscribe. Press the button. That's the way we can keep making some more great videos like this, so we can keep bringing you all the news and views from behind the scenes in football around the world.